if we get off the trail here and then go behind this thing over here, there's rocks that'll go together that we can like throw our food bags in, it'll wedge it, so there's no way a bear could get to it. He knew these places by heart because he had done the trail 12, 15 times. Wow. So it was really nice to hike with the kind of a big expert through the high Sierras.
Where is the highest part relative to some latitude, like you're south of San Francisco right now, still in California?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. So Whitney Whitney might be in Yosemite. It might be in Kings Canyon. I'm not sure which park it's actually in, but it's maybe just a tad south of San Francisco, but not much further south than that. Yeah.
So Whitney is the south end of John Muir, right?
Correct.
And Yosemite is the northern end of John Muir.
You're right. Yeah. So it might be Sequoia or Kings Canyon, one of those two. Yeah, where Mount Whitney is. Yeah, you're right. It's quite a bit further south. All right.
So that's 200 miles? How long is John Muir?
Oh, good question. I hiked it as well, separately, a few years later. But
It's either 200 or 300, I can't remember.
yeah, that sounds about right. 200 miles. That's all right. Sounds about right. So that was the High Sierra. This is a fire tower. So, like I said, I took a lot of detours in the PCT. So there were side trails that went different places. There was a fire tower that you could climb up and look up. So this is a picture that I thought was interesting. So I climbed that fire tower. I'll show you a lot of pictures of the people that I hiked with. I hiked quite a bit with Sycamore and Mountain Mama in there, and I can't remember the guy with the headband's name, and then Joel. So most people have trail names. Joel didn't have one for whatever reason, so that is, I think, a hostel. It's funny, it doesn't look like the greatest place in the world, but I never noticed at the time. It was like just a roof over my head, right, and a mattress to sleep on, and laundry was just the greatest thing in the world. So this is somewhere in pretty far north California at this point. I'm getting close to Oregon. When you're out on trails, and there's so little trail crews, I think you all know, that a lot of times the trails aren't maintained perfectly, and it's always the question of like, do I hop over that caution tape and go across that anyway, or do I get my feet wet? The Pacific Crest Trail, if anybody's hiked the Appalachian Trail, basically your feet will never get wet from walking through a stream, and it's not the case at all on the Pacific Crest. So you're constantly crossing streams and water sources, especially in the High Sierra with all that snow melt. It was crossing sometimes like raging streams that I think that if people say, what's the most dangerous thing you ever do? I think it's nothing to do with wildlife. It's actually crossing those streams in the High Sierra when there's just incredible amounts of snow melting that create like raging torrents that are usually, if somebody crosses it in the morning, it might be this high, and if you cross it 6 hours later in mid-afternoon, it's 4 feet high and at your waist, and you're really struggling to get through. So a couple of my friends, on a little bit of a morbid note, they actually discovered a dead hiker in the High Sierra who had drowned trying to cross the stream. So it's definitely a real danger. It's for sure the thing that I was always the most scared of, crossing those streams.
Did you cross it?
Good question. Probably, knowing me when I was 24, I probably did. Yeah, because you can see that there's no way to get across that stream and keep your feet dry, so I think I valued that. I was like, depends on if my feet were already dry. If they were already dry, I probably tried to cross the bridge. If they were already wet, I just probably went across. So Dr. Feelgood is laying down there, Ladybug is standing up, and Sycamore, who I introduced earlier. This is probably Oregon at this point. So we would filter water from lakes if we could. We would get water from streams. The Appalachian Trail is very nice. There's lots and lots of springs in the Appalachian Mountains, which I more or less trusted because you could see it coming out of a pipe. And I would say, I don't want to put chemicals in this. I don't want to spend the time filtering, so I would just drink it. The Pacific Crest Trail is a lot less springs. So I think this was a small pond or a lake that we would just drink from. I knew a lot of people that got Giardia, so I've had Giardia in the past as well, not on the Pacific Crest, but yeah, we were, I believe, filtering water at this point.
What kind of filter were you using back then?
Oh,
Was it a pump filter? Was it a gravity filter?
you know what I did on the Pacific Crest Trail is I took a Visine bottle and I spit out all the Visine and I sucked up bleach from the Visine bottle and I put 2 drops of bleach in every liter of water that I drank. Not recommended. So that's what I did. I started using Aquamira somewhere around that same time. If you remember Aquamira, it's 7 drops of solution A, 7 drops of solution B. Wait for 5 minutes, pour it in, shake it up, wait a half an hour, and you can drink it. That was my, if I had Aquamira, I would use it. If I couldn't get Aquamira, I would buy bleach, which is pretty crazy, the things I did, right? Poor choices. So, there's Crater Lake. You can kind of see the beard and the hair a little bit growing out. You walk right around the rim of Crater Lake, and one of the kind of like really fun things is there's restaurants, and you're kind of pretty close to a road that goes along the rim of Crater Lake, and people would see you and they would say like, "Oh, what hike are you doing?" And we're like, "Well, Pacific Crest Trail," and they're like, "Oh, which one is that?" And you're like, "Well, it goes from Mexico to here." And they, eventually it would come out that you hiked from Mexico. A guy bought me dinner there because he just wanted to hear stories about the hike from Mexico. So it was really fun. We were pretty bad. You weren't supposed to camp inside the national park. There were some like red tape and rules and regulations. So yeah, I feel like I'm just saying all bad things.
Statute of limitations is long gone.
Yeah, it's almost 20 years. So yeah, we just hid somewhere in camp, which I've actually done quite a few times, and to kind of just get around the red tape, because otherwise if you try to do it, there's so many regulations, and it's like, well, I don't have a car, I can't go to the head ranger station, it's 20 miles away, and yeah, and we wanted to see the sunset at Crater Lake, so that's what we did. So people would often ask, like, well, how would you get to town? We would usually just hitchhike, especially in the west. Towns might be 25, 30, 40 miles away from the trail. So you're talking a day and a half walk if you wanted to do it, and a day and a half walk back. So we would always hitchhike. And I think Sycamore is holding a sign that says Wrights Pass, which I think is in Washington at that point. So we were kind of a scraggly looking crew, but I think people out west are used to hitchhikers a little bit more, but we never waited long and folks would pick us up. We rode in the back of a lot of pickup trucks, stuff like that, 40 miles through a mountain pass road, which is interesting. But yeah, we would usually go into towns together. I had like a loose network of people that I always sort of knew were just behind me or just ahead of me. And then split a hotel room and save a little money. Oh, it was Cactus. It's easy to imagine how he got that trail name, right? He was, I think, in Southern California, he was squatting to do his business, and he was in a cactus when he squatted, so his name became Cactus. So that's Mount Adams behind me. I really, really loved the Cascades. I thought the Cascades were more rewarding and more fun than even the High Sierra, because you're always staring at some giant volcano. So it starts at Lassen Peak, and then you have Shasta is the next really big one. Then you have Mount St. Helens, which is blown apart, but then Mount Adams, and it continues all the way up to the North Cascades. So sometimes you could just see a line of 3, 4, 5 volcanoes, and the most distant one was just a haze, and the closest one would like tower above you. So I really, really love the North Cascades.
Can you see Mount Booth as well?
Yes, yeah, for sure. So Stehenken was basically the last town on the PCT. If anybody has been out there, Stehenken, there's no real road to get to Stehenken. To get there from civilization, there's Lake Chelan, which is a giant lake that I think you have to ride ferry or boat across like several miles from the nearest road. And a friend of mine still works in Lake Chelan, but the Pacific Crest Trail crosses further to the west. So there's no road from the west because it's all rugged mountains, the North Cascades. But it's this little vacation resort town, but they have a school bus that they drive up and back between the Pacific Crest Trail, and they'll just ferry hikers back and forth because they're a source of revenue, and we'll come to town and spend money, and we'll definitely spend money. I was Gravy, that guy that I hiked with for a couple of months on the Appalachian Trail. I remember that they only have a cash only operation in a bakery in Stehenken. So I had a credit card, but I think I only had $10 or $15, something like that. But I really wanted to load up on these bakery goods, and I was kind of bummed that like I only had like a limited amount of cash. And my good friend Gravy, he sent me a card, and he just was like, "You're almost done, congrats." And then he put $10 in there, and that was like the happiest $10 I ever got, because that's like 2 extra big giant jumbo cinnamon rolls that I immediately purchased and ate, and probably packed one out. So that's Stehenken. And the rainy season definitely hit us. So this is probably early to mid-September in northern Washington. I don't think I saw anything for a few days. So it was just sort of like walking through this typical scene. And then we hit the Canadian border. I tried to read that sign. I actually don't know what it says, so I have no idea. I hope it's not graphic or anything. So we packed party hats. We all carried beer. So the group that I finished with is Mr. Beer is a Japanese hiker. So we really enjoyed talking to him, even though he just had limited English. He was just an incredibly nice person. And then Mystic and Southpaw are the other two that I finished with there. So I hiked on and off with them quite a bit. You can see really well in this angle, there's a clear cut. So that's on the Canadian-US border. And it's probably 50 feet, and there's just a clear cut all the way down the border and through Washington and British Columbia there. So you definitely know you're at the border. This little border monument, it's in the foreground there. It splits in half. So PCT hikers like to enjoy a lot of different things, but some of them carry maybe marijuana with them. And they don't want to carry it into Canada because you can get into a lot of trouble. So they would often stash it in that thing. So I don't think there was any in there when we got there, but we definitely checked. But that was, yeah. Times have changed. So we'll keep on moving to the CDT. So a couple years later, we once you do 2, you have to do the 3rd one. The CDT is a completely different thing, at least it was in that point. Much of the trail just isn't there. So there's several different routes. So the AT, it's people get very defensive about you have to hike the White Blaze route, and if you don't hike it, you haven't hiked the AT. And there's a lot of argument about I think maybe I was like following all the rules back then. The PCT is a little bit more laid back. There's definitely there's one section that just goes on a ridge line. It's near the Washington-Oregon border. There's another section that dips down and goes past all these like amazing waterfalls. So everybody does that, even though it's not the official PCT. The CDT, there's really no option of the official trail. So there's at the time I did it, there was the Continental Divide Trail Association. There was the Continental Divide Trail Alliance, who had different routes. There was a man named Jim Wolfe, whose passion was to kind of like mark the CDT. There was a man named Jonathan Lay, who published maps of what he did. And so everybody hikes sort of a conglomeration of 4 or 5 of those different sources that they use. So I think it's a little bit more straightforward now, but oftentimes there's just no trail at all. So you just following a trail and it just peters out, and you're like, I'll just follow my compass in like this direction, and I know I want to go towards that peak way over there, so I'm just going to hike for a few hours, and eventually I'll get there. So it was a lot of fun. It was also really like a challenge in a lot of different ways. So we camped up in Waterton National Park, and then hiked into Montana to Glacier National Park where we started. So
So you did southbound?
southbound,
What time of
correct.
year did you start that?
This was mid-June, I believe.
June?
Yeah. Which I think starting much before that in Glacier, there's snowpack that makes it pretty difficult. So I don't think pictures do it justice, but you'll see some of the snowpack issues I ran into. So there's the group I started with. We're all pretty tall, aren't we? I'm in the orange jacket.
Did you know those people before, or just happened to start the same?
Yeah, I knew him. Let's see if I can go back. How do I go back? So Disco hiked on the PCT, so I talked to him a good bit. And Skittle